Um, Thankfully, everyone is now an expert on large language models and everything else, so I'm going to kind of build on that and start to delve into the world of agents. We're about 15 months old, so this is literally the story of the last year and the work that we've been doing. Now, we set Futuria up having played around with generative AI, but our background as co-founders is in secure, serious organisations, typically national security and defence kind of parts of government. So we have been deploying Agentic AI in those kind of spaces. And it's an architecture pattern that we've developed that works for organisations that are worried about what is happening to their data and maybe have some concerns about things like fine-tuning of models and the like that we've heard about earlier. So just in terms of me, I've got a number of hats. So I've done senior roles in big global businesses in tech, so I bring a kind of exec view of the world. I am a podcast host. I kind of do 2 podcasts, so I kind of talk to chief execs of AI businesses in the market. I'm probably most known for the work that I've done on the global digital responsibility movement, and that's about thinking about the consequential impact of the things that we do using these emergent technologies on people, society and planet. Critically important in the context of what we're talking about in terms of use of AI. But I've always been an innovator. I've always used emerging technologies and done things in public and private sector. It's just most of my career was as an intrapreneur in an organisation as opposed to doing my own startup. So going back to Nigel's first chat of the day, when he was talking about 35 under 35, I'm firmly in the whatever number it is, over 50 kind of category. It's never too late. So Sam Altman said this pretty recently. And especially kind of envisions AI giving people tools to solve complex problems and accelerate human progress as we've never imagined. That's what we do. And when I say that, people kind of have literally said, Rob, you're lying, or no, you're not really, all those things. But genuinely, the things that we've been doing with multiple agent teams, solving complex problems, not process optimization, though we can do that as well, that's what we've been doing for the past year. Now, there are lots of emergent definitions of agentic AI. It only emerged as a term a couple of months ago, but that encapsulates what our view of agentic AI is. Multi-agent teams was what we talked about before. AI as a team member is what we talked about even before that. But it's about, imagine, if you will, for any problem that you've got in an organisation, if you were to bring people around one of these tables with the best capabilities and the best knowledge and access to the best tools and anything they might need to solve that problem, that's what we do with agents. And actually we do it with people as well, because we kind of like both. And it goes back to my CDR hat on, digital responsibility. It's about both in unison. We firmly are in the space of how do we accelerate work and augment people to give them the abilities that kind of just enable them to do it faster. And actually, with more fun, the examples I'll talk about today, the guys on the ground who are using this in live operational environments, actually really like it because it helps them do things faster, better, as we'll kind of talk about. Now, I added this slide earlier, literally as Andy was talking, because I thought I probably need to describe what an agent is in the context of building on what you've heard earlier. So this is what an agent means for us. I'm not saying it's a universal definition. It's what we do. We start with large language models. I don't care which one it is. Actually, we can use small language models, micro language models. The nature of the work they do is such that any of those can work, and any of those in combination. And then we give it a persona. I was thinking, how do I describe persona? It's a bit like if you've played FIFA on the PlayStation, which maybe not many will have, and you get the cards that describe the various kind of capabilities of a player, or Top Trumps, if anyone remembers Top Trumps. It's a persona for an agent. It's kind of, you give it an awareness of the things that it's got access to that enabled it to do the job that it's doing. And then we give it skills and kind of knowledge specific to the organisation that it's, and this is kind of RAG plus almost, going back to the earlier conversation, giving it information specific to the organisation or domain expertise or the world's best information on building hospitals or whatever it might be. So very specific to the use that it's having. We enable it to be taught. So you as somebody can interact with it. So you teach it, actually it learns from its own operation as agents within an agent team as well. We give it long-lived memory. I know memory's improved in terms of the large language models that we've seen over the last year, but we give it an indefinite memory because we need to have full transparency and auditability over everything it does, full replay over everything it does. And most importantly, we give it access to tools. Tools could be go and research on the internet, go and write a Word document, go and read an Excel, go and read a document in SharePoint, link into an enterprise database, hook into this machine learning widget. In essence, what we do with an agent is we enable it to have all of the tools so that it can pick the most appropriate tool to do the micro task that it's been asked to do at a particular moment in time, which is not always about using a large language model to answer the question. The thing that we then do is how do we apply it to real-world business use cases? And this is probably the pattern that is becoming the thing that we're most known for. So if you think about end-to-end project delivery, no one's come to us and said, can you do all of that, Rob? But in essence, kind of the things that we're doing along that cycle, ranging from, I've got a load of money or a portfolio of things that need to be done, how much is it going to cost for the budget point of view, writing a business case? How do I procure it? How do I evaluate the procurement of that? How do I deliver it on time or less than on time or faster? Those are the things that we're doing day in, day out. And if we focus in on one of those, this is an example of a multi-agent team. We tend to talk about it as a bit of a cartoon version, because actually there's 30 to 40 different agents in this team that are working on this particular exercise, which is give me an estimate for the cost of this thing. So it could be a hospital. I'd like an estimate for the cost of a hospital or a ship. Or this is capital projects, but it equally works kind of for other things too. Now, typically in the organisation that we're working with, that's a process that takes quite a few people, quite a few weeks to do an estimate. This agent team does it in 20 minutes. Now, the interesting thing is, which is right? Who knows? But I can do 1,000 different scenarios in 20 minutes. And I can do a normalised distribution across those and make faster decisions rather than waiting for what may or may not be the right answer coming out of that process that takes 6 weeks otherwise. So there's a question of how in the hell do you do that? But all I want to kind of just sow as a seed is you kind of take a series of nichely defined agents and set them tasks. This is not about process optimization. It's not to say this is what you should do, and then the next one does this, and then the next one does this. This is giving a team of agents, a team of people in a room, a task. Go and solve it, and they do. And what happened in that instance is I've seen everything from, slightly weirdly, an agent say, I've had enough of this, I'm not playing anymore, and dropping out of the conversation, through to agents coming up with novel processes to solve the solutions. We've literally had people say, I don't know how to have done it that way, but it's not necessarily wrong. It's just different from how we'll have done it before. So, which I think is what that slide says. So let's look at another one, because kind of another use case later in that, imagine in the delivery of a service, we're thinking about how do we accelerate the productivity. And again, multi-agent team, smaller one this time, because in a sense the task is less complex. It's still difficult because this particular example is in an apprenticeship space. So it's personal information. It's conversations between people in a regulated environment. And again, that's our pattern. It's secure, regulated, complex spaces is where we operate. And it's about ensuring that the apprenticeship coaches spend their time talking to apprentices. Because the forms are all filled in automatically. It takes 4 minutes, not 2 hours for them having written it otherwise. But again, it's that complex interaction of agents that are trained on very specific things that enables that to be happening. So, I needed to give the context of what we do, and that's kind of a very brief glimpse of Agentic AI, which I know is bleeding edge kind of globally because we've talked to big organisations who have been looking for some of this. And I suppose the first lesson learned, which was the focus of the session, was I still find it weird that kind of less than 10 people happen to have kind of come along a way of getting performance out of multi-agent teams when some of the organisations that I'm working with are hundreds of thousands of people and haven't yet done it. It is utterly by chance, I hasten to add. It's not like we had some kind of dramatic moment. So there's a bit of imposter syndrome when I'm sat in front of one of the top 20 biggest companies in the world, as I was recently, because there's this thing. Now, the rest of the market will be getting into such things as well, but that moment as a startup of, oh, wow, that's kind of weird. Startups are hard. There's probably quite a few people in the room who've kind of been through that process. Resilience and continuing to battle and continuing to solve the things that get thrown at you is hard work. But it's quite nice if I compare it with my old world, because I have the freedom to kind of do those things and solve those problems for the first time. And faster, so much faster in terms of the way that we can operate. And values and culture kind of absolutely is everything in the context of what we're doing. And it comes back to, I have two hats. AI entrepreneur, doing cool stuff. Save the planet by not misusing technology and screwing up energy use and things like that. But actually finding a positive focus to do things of how do I create positive impact by innovating using amazing things to do amazing things for people and the organisations in terms of the impact they're trying to have has been a fascinating place to be at the heart of. But more importantly, what about the lessons learned from Agentic AI? I'm not saying this is everything, this is just things that we've found. Do not go for broadly defined agents in teams. Give them as niche tasks as you can possibly do. So, for example, we will not create a project manager agent. We will split down the role of project manager into numerous different specialisms and get them to interact in that kind of particular way. Don't fine-tune the models. It doesn't work for us. The organisations that we are working with do not want to kind of lose their data into model training, so kind of it's not something that we do. And that absolute focus around performance, security, cost, and the balance of that, especially in the context of the infrastructure that's kind of hosting these things. And we do host them in terms of kind of a whole range, kind of public on cloud through on-premise. The market is moving so quickly. I did some work earlier in the year where we were doing lots of image. We had campaign recruitment, multi-agent team. We could do campaign strategy writing to deployment of assets in an hour. I mean, it was incredible. But I wouldn't use, I mean, even in the 2 months that we delivered it, the underlying tools were changing. Ideogram was really cool until the eyes went really weird, and you wouldn't want to use those, so you had to change it. I mean, as I said to the organisation then, don't commit, don't do a 5-year deal with somebody. Find a way of kind of hooking into the right tool at the right point in time. I used to be COO in a payment business. It had to work. And I think the hardest thing with some of these things, and the lessons learned for us, is it's easy to experiment, easy to play. You put it in an operational environment where your products and your customers are utterly dependent on it, it has to work reliably, consistently, securely. And think so carefully around that. Because even with the things that we've been doing, there's so many underlying components. If I'm patching them all the time, I can't do that because the performance changes. Tweak a large language model, it'll change. So think about the operational environment. And then this point around, I know some of you kind of will be thinking, it's not real. Because I've had those conversations. But it is real. People are using those things. I've seen it produce a Word document with a full detailed estimate of incredible things. So it is real. It's just a question of we're all learning. I mean, it's got the badge, kind of as Hannah said earlier. I'm definitely learning all the time. There's no expertise anywhere. But there's 3 big lessons for me. And actually, there's probably 4, because I had a kind of a debate in my head about the last one. How many times do I hear, you've got to sort out all your data? I just fundamentally disagree. You've got to have enough data to be able to do enough things. I've got an agent that fills in data. It will determine whether I can go and research other enterprise systems or the internet to better to complete the data. I don't know what that says about data scientists in terms of long-term 90%, 10% thing, but I just disagree around the data. I disagree about some of the 20 years experience of the way that we've treated data as well, going forward. I think there's a different way. You need massive compute power. We can't possibly afford this. disagree again. I've already said, nichely defined agents, I can use small language models, I can host that in a very different environment than very large language models, trained massively, fine-tuned massively. Don't think of an agent as a person. Do not think, oh, I've got a project manager, I can replace them with a project manager agent. It's not how it works. Think of it more as capability, if you like, in that context. And the other thing, and the other lesson learned, and maybe it's, I should have had 4, it's not long to deliver an agent team. It's a configuration exercise. So we've found it's days to build a team like this. Days, weeks, months to optimize it. And what we've also found is that organizations can then get into the head of, if we added this agent or that, what else could it do? And so they've been evolving it forward. But it's not like implementing SAP. I apologize if anyone's from SAP. But my point is, it's just much faster to be able to experiment, demonstrate, proof of concept, delivery into a live environment. So it's about AI for the rest of us. And in a sense, kind of the value for me, hopefully for everyone, is just picking up all the lessons that everyone's sharing today. It's been a core part of what we want to do, so part of it is very much how do we share that on a global stage as well, and put some sort of process in place. Because the level of awareness and the level of capability has to rise massively across the world. And what part can we play in that? The podcast, of course, is part of it. So if you don't subscribe and listen to Futuria.ai, go and do so immediately. Hannah and Jen were the first kind of episode of season 2. And then think about digital responsibility. So if you're not familiar with digital responsibility, think about the consequential impact of the things that you're doing, the way that you're doing it. And from our point of view, designing all of that into the architectural structure in the first place, enabling full transparency and replayability is a key part of what we do. And if it is interesting to know more, happy to do demos. I will use a quote from somebody this week who saw the demo and went, shit, that's good. Which I think I need to put on the website, really. And seriously, if you want to play, then happy to kind of also talk about how you can actually do something. It's not long to actually deliver a team. But hopefully kind of that gives you a flavour, and that's me, and thank you.